When you think of modern great directors, you probably think of the Oscars and everyone who is nominated. What you're probably not thinking of is the dork presenting the award and making fun of himself as he's dressed up as a Na'vi in front of James Cameron at the Oscars. And let's be honest, his film was also nominated for an Oscar with Tropic Thunder, and it's 1,000 times better. That's right, I want to talk about today director Ben Stiller. And I know, when you think about him, you don't think about a director. You think of Alex the Lion, or how he starred in Noah Baumbach films, or how his dad is the best character in Seinfeld.
What is this? A prophylactic rapper?
When you're thinking of this Nepo baby with his baby blue eyes, you're usually not thinking of his filmography. What you're usually thinking about is his iconic performances over the years, and also how he's tweeting about the Knicks during the Oscars. One thing that I think everyone can agree on is that he's a really good actor, and if you think he isn't, I can get you a nice warm cup of
shut the hell up.
The interesting thing about his career though, like a lot of actors, that wasn't really what he always wanted to do. Ever since the Ben Stiller Show got canceled in the early 90s, he gravitated towards directing. That said, over the last 30 years, he's only directed 6 films, 1 miniseries, and some of the greatest episodes of all time with Severance. So how did this comedian, who is known for making silly movies with Adam Sandler, end up being low-key a genius that doesn't get enough credit? The first thing that really stands out when you're looking at Ben Stiller's filmography is that each of his films has a unity and purpose. With his 6 films, it never felt like he was really just going out there to try to achieve something just for money or box office. Except for that one film, but we'll get to that. Ben Stiller is known for his big comedies of the early 2000s. Zoolander is an amazing comedy showing the stupidity of the modeling world, and also the comedy that comes from these ridiculous celebrities that take themselves so seriously. And you can feel this idea of there being a message and a purpose to these films doubling down when he came back to make his other film that was criticizing celebrities with Tropic Thunder. That one aimed way closer to home in a Team America style where it's really targeting Hollywood and specifically actors, showing on full display the stupidity and self-centeredness of actors taking on terrible roles for hopes of winning an Oscar, whether that means you make a simple Jack or you do reconstructive surgery to play Lincoln Osiris. And the best part about these films is the comedy comes out of the stupid scenarios that they are making fun of. The jokes are because of the stories and the characters and the themes, and that's why we remember characters like Derek Zoolander and Sergeant Lincoln Osiris. There's so much purpose and effort created into these comedies that they don't leave your brain because they are so well crafted. And that purpose and attention to detail with thought applies to all of the films that he's made. There's always a purpose behind what he's creating, whether it's his first film where he's looking at the young 90s generation with Reality Bites, or looking at parasocial relationships with The Cable Guy, or the beauty of finding one's purpose in life by doing what you love rather than being what you're told to do in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Even when Ben Stiller is looking at morally bankrupt industries, there is always a heart bizarrely beating at the center of these films. Ben Stiller films, while being satirical, never feel cruel. They poke fun at the industries, and these characters are funny, but the characters still deserve to be loved and cared about. Whether it's the misguided attempt to get an Oscar for Tug Speedman, or how Derek Zoolander learns to become friends with his rival Hansel, there is always a real heart beating at the center of these films. And then Ben Stiller will go throw a little boy off a cliff. And I think that bizarre earnestness and sincerity is something that a lot of people don't know what to do with due to his comedy background. I think we see this best exampled in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This movie got a middling 52% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the overall critic consensus was pretty mixed, just not knowing what to do with it. It's Ben Stiller breaking out of his normal direction style to create a film visually that is much more daring, pushing the limits on the norms with integrating unique ideas into the background of his world and showing the story of a man leaving his boring world behind as he finds the beauty of the outside world, leaving his office job to find himself. And if that sounds familiar to another show that maybe Ben Stiller was a part of, here's Adam Scott. Oh, wow, shocker, they tied back in. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, though, is painfully sincere. I think it led to people being confused due to their preconceived notions of what a Ben Stiller comedy would be. And I think it left behind Ben Stiller's target audience. But what it did find was an audience that was younger. This film is heavily embraced by the younger generation, Gen Z, that was growing up during this time and feeling that identity of being stuck and wanting to break free. Some of the most beautiful shots I've ever seen are in this film. It was a film I saw in high school and one that cemented how I wanted to be a filmmaker when I grew up. And I didn't think that would come from the dude who played Larry Daly in Night of the Museum. And that creativity he always uses in his directing is so interesting. He will always take large creative swings, only making around 2 features every 10 years. When he puts his mind in making a film, it has all of his attention and focus behind it, and you can feel it. Which also makes it so interesting that he's almost never made a movie in the last 10 years, with his last film coming out in 2016, and that was Zoolander 2. The one time Ben Stiller ended up cashing in on his filmography was the last time he ever did a film. This was really his only unoriginal and derivative film, which he thought was going to be something that would please the fans, but it ended up being such a bomb and so old and behind the time that it reoriented him, completely focusing on making new creative endeavors. I think in a bizarre way, the bombing of Zoolander 2 was probably the best thing that could have happened to his career, because instead of looking backwards, he looked forward. He focused on making the limited series Escape at Dannemora, and then shifting to directing and executive producing maybe one of the greatest shows of all time, Severance. Every film, whether it was a setback or a failure or a huge success, felt like he was growing one film after the other. From his small indie roots to his tonally different and cult classic Cable Guy, to large-scale amazing comedy The Zoolander, to even bigger and more visually insane and well-directed comedy The Tropic Thunder, to his best camera work and visuals of any of his films with Secret Life of Walter Mitty, you can see the similarities to how his outstanding direction has evolved throughout the years when we see it mastered in scenes like this in Severance. When people finish an episode of Severance and go, Ben Stiller directed that? How could he do that? Did he just start? They're missing over 30 years of him directing and evolving as an artist that's just right there for them to discover. This man has been taking paycheck from all of his acting films where he gets little input and cashing them all in on his features and shows, and man, it feels like it's paid off creatively. His dual success as an actor first allows him the luxury a lot of directors don't have, and that is to take huge giant risks creatively. Financially, he can be fine with a film bombing because he can always bank it against him just starring in another Madagascar or Happy Gilmore 2. And I think that's what makes him so selective about the films and shows that he's directed. These are his things that he gets to create creatively with no financial idea in mind, and it has led to some of the best pieces of television and films that I've ever seen. Ben Stiller is a heck of a director, and I can't wait to see what he does in the future. Please just don't do Zoolander 3!